I'm Dwayne Brown. Tonight on KPBS Evening Edition, a top official at the VA reveals findings about an investigation into long delays at veterans hospitals. Also tonight, a nuclear expert wants to shut California's last operational nuclear power plant. We'll tell you why he's worried.
The long-running drought is shrinking our rivers and reservoirs, but it's making our mountains taller. I'm Amitha Sharma. What the drought means for the ground under our feet. And City Heights is finally getting a skate park, why it's so important for the community.
The National Park Service celebrates 98 years, and we get a bird's eye view of San Diego's only national park in Point Loma. KPBS Evening Edition starts right now. Hi, good evening. Thanks for joining us. After weeks of investigations, the VA's Deputy Secretary says there's no conclusive evidence showing delays in health care caused any deaths at Veterans Hospital in Phoenix. Sloan Gibson announced the findings in an interview. The agency was rocked by reports of vets being forced to wait for months to see a doctor and claims of a cover-up. The controversy led to an overhaul at the Department of Veterans Affairs, including plans for new VA clinics across the country, 2 of them right here in San Diego County. The leader of San Diego's Roman Catholic Diocese is being treated tonight for prostate cancer. Bishop Cirillo Flores is undergoing treatment at USC Hospital in Los Angeles. A church statement says the extent of the cancer isn't known yet. Flores is also still being treated for a stroke he suffered last spring. Of course, he became San Diego's bishop last September. Lawyers for a Mexican billionaire were back in court today, where a judge denied most of their requests in the case of alleged illegal campaign donations. Jose Susamo Azano Matsura is accused of funneling up to $600,000 to local politicians. It's illegal for foreign nationals to contribute to U.S. campaigns. The judge did grant Azano's request to seal court documents already made public by prosecutors this month, claiming he came up in earlier federal investigations involving drug smuggling and money laundering. Folks in Napa are still cleaning up tonight after Sunday's major 6.0 earthquake. Several dozen people were injured, and dozens of buildings are now red tagged, meaning they're uninhabitable. Broken water mains are still a problem, and Pacific Gas and Electric is checking for broken gas lines as well. But business owners say the quake affected only a small part of town, and they're getting ready for Labor Day weekend tourists. Earthquake worries have a federal nuclear expert calling to shut down California's last operational nuclear plant. The Diablo Canyon plant is near several fault lines in San Luis Obispo County. Its former inspector says no one knows whether it can withstand severe shaking. His bosses at the Nuclear Regulatory Commission say the reactors are safe. Diablo Canyon was given a seismic retrofit back in the late 70s, but the inspector's report points out another fault line discovered in 2008. Operation of the plant is currently under review. New research finds California's severe drought is depleting more than water. It's actually causing the Earth's surface to lift up. Amitha Sharma takes a closer look at the local study.
California's record drought isn't just drying out the land, it's making it rise. A new study from Scripps Institution of Oceanography reveals that massive water loss is causing the entire western United States to spring upward. The findings were published online in the journal Science. Scripps researcher Adrian Borsa worked on the study. He joins me now with Randy Hansen, senior research hydrologist with the U.S. Geological Survey. Adrian, you and your colleagues discovered the land rise based on ground sensor data. What exactly did it show?
It showed a rise really starting in about 2013 over the entire western United States. Elsewhere, there was actually rise occurring in Southern California before then, but this rise was about 4 millimeters on average and quite dramatic in the mountains, 15 millimeters or so.
And what is the rise due to?
We interpret it primarily as water loss. So the water loading on Earth's surface depresses it, and when that water goes away, the surface rebounds.
Okay, so Randy, Adrian says that the actual rise is about 15 millimeters or so, which is about half an inch. How significant is that rise in terms of the effects?
Well, it probably is significant, and when you look at it, it's an elastic deformation. So those as the load is taken away, the land is able to rise and whatnot. And if the water comes back, the land will be depressed again. So we're seeing that as an artifact of the drought.
So what is the impact on roads and infrastructure of a half an inch rise?
Well, I think, correct me if I'm wrong on this, most of that's occurring in the more mountainous regions and not in the valleys. In the valleys, we're seeing the opposite, where they're pumping groundwater and whatnot. We're actually seeing the land fall, the land subsidence. So
has there been any kind of determination made as to whether this is due to over-pumping of groundwater?
Well, this is really an artifact of the natural replenishment of the water in the mountainous areas, is what Adrian and his colleagues have been looking at. Out in the valleys, they're actually just pumping the groundwater regardless of climate and just driven by demand.
Adrian, there was a 6.1 earthquake in Napa Valley yesterday.
Yes.
Is there any connection between earthquakes, seismic activity, and this land rise?
There was a recent study that showed a connection. We took a look at that for that purpose, and we did not see anything. What we saw was about a week's worth of additional stressing on these faults due to the water loading, which we interpreted as not being significant. The earthquake itself, this Napa earthquake, is I think, characteristic for that area. It's a very seismically active area.
And how do you expect this information to be used?
What I'm hoping is that California's and Western water resource managers would be able to use this as an additional tool in their observations to understand what's happening with water usage and water changes.
And what about groundwater in this area, in the San Diego County region? What's the status of pumping, over-pumping, or just land rise in general?
Well, we don't get a lot of our water from groundwater in San Diego County. Actually, I checked some hydrographs before I came over here, and we're about a foot decline more than normal for this time of year. So we really are relying heavily on imported water and our surface water reservoirs and whatnot for the majority of our water, and very little groundwater at this point.
So there's land rise, but there's also falling land, right? I mean, is the soil depressing as a result of the drought?
So withdrawal from the subsurface aquifers will result in collapse deep down, which shows up as subsidence on the surface. For our study, we excluded those stations. That effect is very local to where the extraction is occurring. The uplift from this elastic rebound is a much broader signal. So we're able to actually get a measurement of what's happening even though we exclude stations over aquifers.
And if the drought ends, and we all expect it to end at some point, will the ground then shift again and get lower?
Absolutely. In fact, what we see in 2011, which was a quite wet year in California, was subsidence. And that was one of the clues that we were actually, in fact, seeing water changes, because we saw both subsidence and uplift, all of which we could tie back to observed precipitation changes.
And Randy, how long will it take the groundwater to be replenished?
It takes a very long time. Most of the water that's being pumped in places like the Central Valley and other alluvial basins are anywhere from thousands to tens of thousands of years old, so it takes quite a while for that water to be replenished, and they're really using water that's very old.
Okay, we're going to wrap it there. Randy, Adrian, thanks so much for coming on the program.
Thank you.
Thank you.
California is now the first state to require kill switches on cell phones. Governor Jerry Brown signed it into law today. The technology would make stolen cell phones useless while the wireless industry resisted the change. A recent report shows fewer iPhones are getting stolen since Apple put kill switches on them. A bill to protect crime victims on college campuses is on the governor's desk tonight. AB 1433 requires colleges to report certain violent crimes to local police, such as sexual assault and hate crimes. It was prompted by reports some colleges have been covering up campus crime. Now, other schools have been accused of doing too little to educate students and staff about sexual assault. Join us tomorrow night right here on Evening Edition for a look at what San Diego State University is doing about it. Well, the end of summer is near, and all across the county, schools are looking at new Common Core standards KPBS education reporter Matt Bowler joins us to talk about Common Core testing and teacher training. Matt, this is the first year students are officially tested under Common Core. How is it different from last year's testing?
Well, the short answer is this year it counts. Last year was the test of the test. They ran the whole testing system to see how that testing system would do. The kids took the test as if it was real, all to make sure the testing system would work. This year is the baseline. So while this year's test does count, it only counts when compared to next year's test.
All right, so did this year's test go over? How well did it go over?
Well, the group in charge of the test says it went well. California is using the new Smarter Balance testing system. It's run by the Smarter Balance Assessment Consortium. There are representatives from about 20 states across the country managing the whole thing. They say that about 4.2 million students at over 16,000 schools took nearly 12.2 million tests. They also say they had about 1,100 help desk inquiries every day of the test, but they think that that's okay given the volume of testing that was going on.
And is it true, Matt, some teachers worry they haven't trained enough to teach Common Core standards?
Well, yes, and I sat down with Nadine Bazouk, the Director of Teacher Education at San Diego State University, and she told me that elementary school teachers in particular need more support to adapt their teaching methods to the new Common Core standards.
Elementary school teachers have to teach lots of subjects all day long, so they're going to need help in enhancing their math knowledge and in learning more about the Common Core standards, the concepts behind the Common Core standards at their grade level, some teaching strategies that are going to help the kids be able to meet those new standards.
Now, did any group of teachers get better training than others?
Well, ironically, student teachers may have an advantage here. Bazouk says the young teachers simply have more class time learning the new standards.
I've got 45 contact hours with them. I could always use more time, but a district just can't imagine 45 hours of professional development with each of their teachers in a year. I don't think they can make it happen.
So is there anything parents can do to help get kids ready for the Common Core test?
When I asked Bazouk that same question, she told me a story about her father going to night school to learn about new math. Baby boomers will remember when new math came into sort of American schools. It was this large educational shift, a new way of thinking about math. Parents and students and teachers across the country had to learn how to do new math. Now, while Bazouk was careful not to conflate the two issues, new math and Common Core, because she likes the idea of a national educational standard, and like Common Core and new math did ultimately fail, she says that if parents want their kids to do well, they need to show initiative like her father.
KPBS education reporter Matt Bowler. Managers of San Diego's Wildlife Refuge are hunting for a long-term plan to deal with a large patchwork of land just east of Bonita and Chula Vista. But KPBS reporter Eric Anderson says coming up with a plan that pleases everyone is proving to be a challenge.
This sparse landscape can look dry and lifeless to the average observer, but not to Jill Terp. She manages the San Diego National Wildlife Refuge east of Bonita and Chula Vista. When her eyes sweep across this hillside, she sees habitat and history.
We're out here in this area that burned in the 2003 and 2007 fires, and we're looking at some of the recovery of the coastal sage scrub community in this area. This is Artemisia californica. This is coastal sage, the plant that this habitat community is named for.
The plant used to dominate the Southern California coast. Development supplanted most of the endangered coastal sage scrub habitat, and the remaining pockets are constantly threatened. Fire did the damage here.
So you can see areas where maybe the burn was a little less intense and maybe didn't burn so much in the later fire. And then maybe these areas that are more bare of vegetation were burned more heavily or were more affected at both times.
Terp wants to understand how the native plants are bouncing back on the refuge's more than 11,000 acres. She says nurturing the habitat will nurture endangered species. That includes birds like the California gnatcatcher and least Bell's vireo, and the Kino checker spot butterfly. She says when people understand that, their perspective can change.
We want people to learn about the plants and animals that are out here, understand it's the natural heritage of this area, and by developing that appreciation in folks, that'll help us to do better at conserving these lands.
And the Wildlife Refuge just sits right over that hill in the next valley. It's sitting right next to a major urban area, East Lake. The homes crowded on this hillside sit on land that used to look like the refuge. The suburbs won't encroach on the refuge. The lands are protected from development. But Andy Ewan hopes that people will visit.
We think the San Diego National Wildlife Refuge is the archetype of an urban refuge. We are literally on the doorstep of 3.5 million people. You step outside of downtown San Diego, and in minutes you are out in tremendously productive wildlife habitats.
Ewan says with so many people so close, there are many opinions about the best management strategies. People are interested in preserving access to the trails. They want pristine habitat. But the issue that drew the most fire from the public was a proposal that allows for hunting in part of the refuge. There's a chance here to hunt small game or game birds.
It's sandwiched by lands that are already open to the public for hunting. So hunting is allowed on the Bureau of Land Management lands here and on the California Department of Fish and Wildlife lands here. So our addition of our refuge lands fills in that gap between two areas that are already available for hunting to the public.
That riled environmentalists. An online petition to ban hunting has bagged more than 80,000 signatures. Biologist Renee Owens is not surprised, and she says guns are a concern.
Personally, when I go walk my dogs in Forest Service land, I don't go during certain hunting seasons. It's better safe than sorry. So I do alter my own recreation based on what's going on.
Owens says hunters are a small and shrinking minority, but they are vocal. She acknowledges that federal officials are trying to balance a mandate to allow different kinds of recreational activities on refuge lands, but she thinks hunting can be left out.
The truth is, a lot of these users, hikers, bikers, equestrians, photographers, birders, don't want firearms in their outdoor experience. It's pretty much that simple. And then there's all of the safety questions and increased fire risk.
Fish and Wildlife's Andrew Ewan says refuge managers are considering 4 different proposals. The alternatives contain plans for habitat protection, recreational access, and hunting. He says the final plan could be just one alternative or contain parts of several proposals. Even then, the resulting plan won't be chiseled in stone.
Over time, we're going to be monitoring the success of the refuge in terms of recovery of endangered species, the health of the native plant communities, the opportunities for the public to enjoy these lands. And we're going to evaluate that over time.
Ewan is pleased that people are speaking out about the refuge's future. He says that tells him people care. In fact, enough people are speaking out that the initial public comment period has been extended 30 days until the middle of September. Eric Anderson, KPBS News.
Video journalist Nick McVicker helped produce that story. We have more about the San Diego National Wildlife Refuge on our website, kpbs.org. White House honors for a North County couple who run an organic farm and teach veterans to do the same. Colin and Karen Archiplay will be named Champions of Change in a White House ceremony on Wednesday. They're co-founders of Archie's Acres in Escondido, and they created the Veteran Sustainable Agricultural Training Program, or VSAT. President Obama's Champions of Change honors folks in a variety of fields whose innovations have improved their communities. Recently, we told you about a grant to build a new skate park in City Heights. Amitha Sharma takes a look at why it's a big deal, not just for skateboarders, but the community.
Skateboarders in San Diego's City Heights community have sought for 3 years to get a park built where they can practice their sport. The effort was part of a larger discussion about the city's unequal access to parks and infrastructure. This summer, the city said it will spend nearly $2 million in state grant money to build a skate park near Cherokee Point Elementary School across from Park de la Cruz. Now, a new study shows skateboarding is actually good for your health and overall well-being. Marnie Purcell-Hill is a senior research associate with Human Impact Partners. She joins me now by phone. Marnie, what are the health benefits of skateboarding?
Well, we found that skateboarding is beneficial for things like youth development. Was actually one of the big ones that was kind of different and interesting in what we found. And also, of course, physical activity, injuries, and we also looked at safety from crime. And skate parks are beneficial for youth development. They help with things like self-esteem, motivation, leadership development, a sense of social belonging. We found that more youth would have access to a park and this opportunity for physical activity, and may actually be won over to the sport because they see this skate park built there, so it would have benefits for physical activity. We also found that injuries that skateboarding is actually about the same as soccer and actually safer than football and basketball. And we also found that the youth being in the space and keeping the space active and feeling a sense of protection and ownership of the space might actually keep the park safer from crime. So that's sort of the gist of what we found.
So tell me a little bit more about social connections. How big of a role does a skateboard park play in bringing a community's youth together?
Well, one skateboarder, he kind of said it really well. He felt like his fellow skaters were like a second family. He said, we have each other's backs. If someone is out late, we pick each other up, or if someone has problems, we talk to him. So it's really, and he said that skating was something that he did that was something productive, and it was really fun to do with his friends. And so it's this sense of creates a community. Especially, it can be important for youth who don't really feel like they like the mainstream sports. And so it is this sense of opportunity for youth who may not feel like there's really as much of a place for them in some mainstream society.
Okay, and we're going to have to wrap it there. Marnie, thank you. I'm joined now by 17-year-old Leslie Renteria of City Heights. Leslie, as a member of the Youth Council, you were a big part of the effort to get the city to agree to build a skate park. What sparked the campaign?
About 4 years ago, we had an accident with one of our youth council members. His name was Marcos Olasquaga, and that interested us on creating a skate park so the skaters could actually have a safe place to skate. So that was one of the major interests which we had.
So, skateboarding is primarily a male-dominated sport. Once the skateboard park is built, how much do you expect girls to pick up the sport as well?
Well, throughout the events that we had, to advocate for the construction of the skate park, we were able to see how there are more girls getting interested in skateboarding. I actually feel that there's going to be more women, more young ladies participating in the skate park and attending it. So I think it's going to be another way of sparking the interest within the women and the girls in City Heights.
So, as I said before, you were a member of this youth council that really got this campaign moving forward. KPBS spoke to a city official earlier today, and we were told that the skate park was probably going to be built in about a year or two. That's a real success for this youth council. How does it feel?
It feels great to know that we've had this huge accomplishment. It was about to be 5 years since we've done this. We've had this campaign going on, and knowing that we've got the funding and that we've got support from city, we feel great to know that we're doing an impact in our community and benefiting the youth in City Heights. So,
okay, we're going to wrap it there. Leslie Renteria, thanks so much for coming on the program.
Thank you.
Visitors were allowed in for free today at over 400 national parks across the country to commemorate the 98th birthday of the National Park Service. We took a tour of San Diego's only national park overlooking the ocean in Point Loma.
Like a throwback to the mid-1800s when snake oil was good for any and everything that ailed you, actors dressed in period outfits serenade and greet visitors at the old Point Loma Lighthouse.
That this was critically important to the protection of San Diego Bay and to the stories of the military that resound within our community.
Eileen Martinez is a native San Diegan who oversees the Cabrillo National Monument and Park. which includes one of the first lighthouses built on the West Coast more than 100 years ago. Twice a year, the park opens the tower's hatch for visitors to get a bird's-eye view of San Diego.
And we are here standing on the tip of Point Loma overlooking San Diego Bay and the Pacific Ocean on the birthday of the National Park Service.
Celebrating 98 years and 401 parks across the country.
And that includes national seashores, national memorials, national parks, national recreation areas, national monuments like where we are today.
About 2,500 visitors make a daily trek to Cabrillo National Park, named after explorer Juan Rodriguez Cabrillo, as a testament to the first European to set foot on what's now the west coast of the United States in 1542.
So it's a wide variety, an amazing system that preserves our cultural and natural history.
And great views of the bay, whale watching, tide pools, all can be seen from Cabrillo, which covers less than a mile at the southern end of Point Loma. Look for strong rip currents and high surf, higher than normal along the coast this week. Temperatures in the low 80s beachside, upper 80s, low 90s for the inland valleys, mid 60s at night. For the mountains, low to mid 80s with lots of sun. Desert temperatures well above 100 this week. Tonight's stories are online at kpbs.org/evening edition. Thanks for joining us. You have a great night.